Sorry about the executive session and the last minute cancellation earlier, but all things are good when you don't have to have an executive session. So take that for what it's worth. Do we have a flag, Ms. Logan?
We do.
Whatever that is. Okay. If you would join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You. Let the record show that all members are present. I would like to recognize our visitors tonight. It's always a pleasure to have people with us, and it's amazing how many more people that we've been getting with us lately. Zoom may be the best thing that ever happened to public participation. So with that, we have the additions, deletions, revisions. There were 3 items mailed out earlier. That is to add to the agenda items in 4.6, the resignations of Katie Krause, Heidi Stewart, Shannon Kohler. Those were resignations, right?
Yes, sorry.
So any other additions to the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Smith moves, Ms. Norris seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, that brings us up to our special acknowledgement. We are so delighted to welcome families from Grizzly Mountain Homelink tonight. Grizzly Mountain Homelink is a tremendous asset to our district. It's an opportunity for us to partner with a group of parents and community members who are very important to our community, who are taxpayers, whose children deserve a quality education on the terms that they want to give it. And we are delighted to have Mr. Oakers agree to take up the mantle of being the champion, and it has wildly exceeded all expectations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Oakers, and if you want to give a presentation and introduce your guest.
So Johnny and I are actually going to tag team this.
I hear from you all the time.
Johnny, you're more than welcome to introduce the Quinns, and I'll kind of give the backstory.
All right, yeah, so we've got Ryan Quinn here tonight with his parents. I saw him on the Zoom. And so Ryan's a student in our program, and he has started a podcast related to sports, and it is just phenomenal to see what he's learning and what he's doing through that podcast. And so I'd encourage all you board members to go out and take a listen. And so we are here to recognize him for that tonight.
I think, Johnny, we're going to play a quick clip from episode 14, if that's okay with you.
Amazing.
All right. We'll just play about 15 seconds.
It was a fun episode. I got to interview Jace about the NBA trades and the NBA draft that was last night. And what's really cool about my podcasting, what I'm doing, is I can record over the phone. So in the times of lockdown, I'm at my house and Jace is at his house, and we're recording over the phone. So that's really fun. So I hope you guys can enjoy.
So when we were talking about students that deserve recognition, Ryan Quinn was the first one to come to mind. I heard it. We know his family, they're involved in a lot of things, and they said, hey, we're trying out this Grizzly Mountain Homelink, and my student was really interested in sports journalism. And as part of his professional education plan, he decided to kind of pursue this route and made a podcast. And I think the coolest thing, it's still going. I think we're on episode 15. So this is not something that was just an over the weekend project. He's sticking with it. I believe he's taking specialized classes on sports journalism. So his mom, Jenny, and dad, Brendan, are on as well. And I believe we have a special presentation. Brendan, you have something to give Ryan?
I sure do. Joel came by this afternoon and dropped off this plaque. So this is the first time that Ryan is seeing this. I kept it secret in the office the whole day. So this is your appreciation award, bud.
So I'm sure the board has some questions about Ryan. I know the Central Oregonian is planning on doing an article on him as well in the upcoming week. So he's getting lots. He's our local celebrity.
This is going to explode the enrollment in the podcast. Your subscriber list is going up.
True. Ryan, I just want to tell you, after I heard about you and heard about that we were going to be honoring you tonight, I went and watched your entire series. And I was really impressed at what you're doing. And I want to just say thank you for making the Crook County look great. I can't wait to start showing you to the bigger world.
Thank you.
So my question goes to both Ryan and his parents. So how's the Homelink program working for you?
I would say it's awesome. We're grateful that it's an option. One thing we have, Ryan's in 7th grade and our son Noah's in 5th grade. And the big thing they told us this summer is that they really wanted to avoid Zoom school if possible. And so we said, well, the way that we could do that is to commit to homeschooling. And everything about it has been awesome. I have nothing but great things to say. We have not homeschooled before, but in these times, it's definitely been the best fit for our boys.
Will you return back to in-person classes next year if there's no restrictions?
At this point, I think so. They're both pretty social and they miss sports and their friends. But who knows, you know? I mean, we didn't know we'd be in this spot, so maybe that would change. But right now, this has been awesome.
Good.
I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, it's just nice to be able to work at your own schedule and not having like certain times to do things, so you can pick your schedule. And yeah, I can get a lot of things done, and then I have the podcast on top of that I can do that I probably wouldn't be able to do if I was doing Zoom school.
Very cool.
Okay.
Ryan, do you desire to have a career in journalism or in sports journalism?
Yeah, so I want to be a sports play-by-play broadcaster when I grow up. So like on the TV when they're saying like football, basketball, just talking about the play-by-play, and I just thought that podcasting could be a fun way to see in that kind of side of sports journalism. So yeah.
That's cool. Do you have a favorite sport?
Yeah, my favorite sport to play is basketball, but my favorite sport to watch is football.
So what classes do you think are going to help you if you make this a career? That takes some thinking, I know.
So there was this outschool class that I did with a teacher over Zoom, and he was a radio broadcaster, and he taught me how to be a sports broadcaster really, and tips and tricks and stuff. So yeah, I just finished that class.
Very cool.
So Ryan, if we had a journalism school class at the high school, wouldn't you want to be a part of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you think we ought to have one, right? Because I think so too. And the superintendent should be hearing this very loudly.
Okay, Quinn family, we will work on it.
Rob, when we get back to games, maybe you can slot Ryan in for some of your play-by-play.
I was just thinking that I think Mr. Carr and Mr. Lowenbach are in trouble for their jobs there at Friday Night Lights and at the basketball games. That'll be fun.
I think I see a role for Jason Carr in this.
Yeah, for sure.
Just be careful, Mr. Quinn, because my degree is in journalism. Mr. Carr's degree is in journalism. So you'll end up in a school district if you're not careful. Well, congratulations. We are delighted to have you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Quinn family, you should be very, very proud. Prineville is very, very proud. So thank you, Ryan, for making us proud.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We'll see you soon, we hope. Not on video.
But come back anytime.
All right. We're going to turn our agenda to honoring our transportation team. I see Ms. Williams on there, but I bet Superintendent Johnson opened this.
I will start this off. I think that one of the actions that we are very proud of in Crook County School District is acknowledging and affirming the hard work that people do. Everyone has an important role. Everyone is a member on our team, and we did not want to let 2020 pass by without saying a heartfelt thank you to our transportation department. They started going through the ringer last March, and they have been flexible, service-oriented, have been the bridge from Crook County School District out to our families, taking food, taking paper packets, bringing paper packets back, taking Wi-Fi out, taking books out that were donated or going out from the library. I just look at their flexibility and what they've done, and I'm happy to bring them to the board tonight and honor them and affirm the work they've done. And Michelle has some more words, and Jason Carr has some photos for you so you can see them in action.
Okay, so as with everybody else this year, we had lots of changes. So for those of you that don't know, most of our drivers have driven the same students for year after year after year. And this year, about a week and a half before school started, we handed them all new routes, new students, new areas of town, and they all jumped in and got right on it. Then a few weeks later, we brought the secondary students back, and they were once again asked to bid on new routes, start new routes, and they had about a day to prepare for that. And once again, they all jumped in, did what they needed to do, got those done. The majority of them have never driven routes that were back-to-back routes. And we've asked them to step out of their comfort zone, clean more than ever, maintain daily rosters, seating charts. They've delivered meals, homework, and they've continued to provide that smile and that customer service. So I just want to say a huge thank you to them and all of them for what they've done without the grumble and the extra time that the office staff has put in to make sure that the drivers had what they needed, and the time that, you know, we've had one mechanic for most of the year, and the time that he's put in to make sure that those buses were up and running. So huge thank you to all of the transportation staff.
When you go out to our transportation area, out to our transportation building, one thing that will stick out to you is that building shouts, people care about this equipment, they care about this space. We went out there today taking cupcakes that one of our directors made, and in the front little planters that are painted like a school bus, they were full of evergreens with a big red bow. You saw the new sign on the side of the building. I looked from upstairs down into the shop. The shop is absolutely spick and span. Every bus is shiny and beautiful, cared for. I found out today that our transportation department went through every bus and deep cleaned from the top to the bottom. So I hope that you get a chance, board, to pop out there and just look, because we have a team that is just playing a great game out there with a great leader and great coach. We had staff in the office who were working on routes for the limited in-person instruction, which means that our transportation department takes another twist, takes another bend, and provides another type of service. They're just a remarkable group of people. I'm so proud they're a part of Crook County School District, and it's my pleasure to thank them tonight formally in front of the board.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say something about
Go for it, Walt.
about Michelle. I remember when she came on board, And I can tell you, and I know you can back me up on this, from day one, has been presented with major challenges in this school district, and she's taken every one of them on, and now she's got the operation running smooth. Michelle, don't go anywhere.
Thank you, Walt. I don't plan to. Love Crook County.
I would just add my thanks to Sarah's and Walt's. I know that our drivers have been asked to do things they never imagined they would be doing when they signed on to a bus driver's job. And they've become tech experts and food handlers and everything else in between. And, you know, I know that has to be a bit of a brain twist for them, but they've done a great job. Crook County has shown in this region and in this state response to pandemic. And our bus drivers have been a big part of that. So thank you, Michelle, and thank your entire group, please.
Thank you, Scott.
Anybody else got anything? Okay, we will move on to the other agency update. I'm sorry, public comments. Way ahead of myself. So how are we doing this, Dr. Johnson? If you have a public comment, you're on the Zoom, you can just put it in the chat. If you're in YouTube, you need to email to Jason Carr and he will let you in to the Zoom call. Jason, can you talk about how that works for folks viewing on YouTube?
Yeah, if they just want to, in the comment section in YouTube, if they just want to let me know that they are interested in publicly speaking, then I'll make sure they get connected to Zoom.
So while we are waiting for that, well, let's do the consent agenda and then we'll come back and see if there's anybody waiting to give public comments, okay? So email, put comment in the text box or in the chat box on the YouTube, and Jason will send you the information. So we will be back in just a second to take public comments. Consent agenda, we're adding resignation, 80. We already did that, sorry. I'm off track again. High Desert ESD report is what we're doing. Questions about that one? Doug, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Just one piece that I pulled out of the High Desert ESD report that I'd like to share with the other board members is that there's a comment in there about substitute teachers. And of course, substitutes are kind of top of mind this week. Yeah. But one of the comments they made was that in a K-12 career, students' K-12 career, that a full year of it, of their education will be presented by a substitute, which is pretty remarkable. It's just under, just about 8% of their total education will be delivered by a substitute. And I just thought, as I read that's a piece of information that as we dig into it and analyze it and understand it better, could help us with our goals of achieving better education for our students.
Chairman Cooper, because of the board's interest in the substitute number, we have a little blurb coming up about that later in the meeting.
Gwen, I have a question for you as our High Desert board rep. Perhaps
Sure.
You could take this back to the board meeting. I see in here this comment about we suspended our substitute training due to COVID conditions or COVID restrictions. Could you please ask the ESD how it is that we can teach advanced calculus or welding or ceramics or any number of other subjects to our students, but they can't manage to teach substitute teacher training? Are you kidding me?
I will talk to Paul Andrews and I will find out if he has a good reason for that and get back to you.
That is a laughable statement.
Would you like some background on that?
Yeah, very much so.
So because Crook County is open, we have a need for substitute training. And given the activity around our enrollment of substitutes right now, we will have a substitute training offered to the people here in Crook County that would like to step up and sub. Later if Sean comes on, Sean has had a late evening, and if Sean comes on, he will tell you the number of substitutes that are truly available to Crook County this year. And we did, as you know, we had a shortage. And so we have had the opportunity now to enroll a new round. We have had approximately 14 as of today sign up and notify us that they are interested in subbing in Crook County. Out of the 1,000 that you see talked about in the ESD document, we had 89 approximately that were interested in subbing in Crook County, and that has changed as the year has gone on. So we have been running short, and there's a whole initiative going on to take care of that shortage. So the ESD has been responsive, and yes, they did stop training subs and reviving it for Crook County.
That is excellent. I'm not surprised at all to hear Crook County is ahead of the curve. It still doesn't excuse ESD's statement. We can instruct no matter what the conditions.
I will say there was a bit of frustration around that statement by our team in HR as well.
Okay, we are back to public comments. And Jason indicates there was no one that came in from YouTube and said that they were interested in commenting. Anybody, last chance for anybody that's on the Zoom call? Nobody put their name in the chat box. So, okay, we'll close the public comments. We will move on to superintendent update.
Hey, Scott, just so you know, when you move your mouth to the side, your volume drops off completely.
Thank you, Jason. That's very helpful to know. One would never know that if one weren't there. Okay, so superintendent update. Sarah.
All right.
Status update.
So I
need to do the consent agenda.
Didn't I do it already? No, you approved doing it. Okay. That was to approve the agenda. All right.
That was
sorry.
the regular agenda.
I know.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
How about as amended? Because there were 3 additions to it.
Good.
And I'll second that.
That was Doug second. So Patty moved, Doug seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, reopening status update.
All right. So I probably breached some of my own message by addressing the substitute earlier, but I think that's okay because I'm not sure Sean is on here. So as you know, it is our goal to open our schools January 4th. I have been in communication with Colt Gill at the ODE. There is not a decision yet. There's a lot of consideration and evaluation among the teams that would determine if we can be open and if they could extend safe harbor. So we won't know on that until, I mean, it could take clear up until right after Christmas break. So I'm going to ask Dr. Hoff if he would mind putting up slides. So Joel, do you want to talk about them or would you like me to?
No, either one, whatever you prefer, Dr. Johnson.
Good, we want to hear your voice, go.
All right, so this data you're looking at now is fresh as of about 4 p.m. this afternoon. We had our biweekly total for the last 2 weeks jumped up to 118, and our test positivity rate for the county went to 9.7. Here you can see just the trajectory, the trend of our case count. So unfortunately, we've essentially almost quadrupled since they started keeping track of it this way for the biweekly total. So we're really trying to get the message out, that magic number that would allow us to get back without safe harbor. If they said we're not extending safe harbor, we would have to get down to 45 biweekly cases by December 28th. So we are watching this very closely. Jason and Sarah have done a great job, Dr. Johnson, getting the word out on what's needed in order to, from our community in order to get those cases low. So we are continuing to keep watching and keep planning for as many scenarios as we can.
And because our community really values transparency and they value communication, Jason is leading a communication that will go out each week, and it will have in it the number of teachers that have tested positive, the number of teachers that are quarantined, and then the last thing it will have is the number of families that are quarantined. Jason, do you want to speak to that? Because I think I missed two key phrases. Self-quarantine would be a family matter.
Yeah, so I really ran this by our school nurses who work with the health department. You know, part of this I think is really sort of started with internal communication with the staff. As we all know, we live in a small town and we have only a handful of schools. So every time there are positive cases and or exposures and there are quarantines, the chatter, you know, occurs. And I think without context, it sort of has upset folks or just concerned them about what's going on. So Wendy and Megan are two school nurses. I worked with them a couple hours today and came up with some information that they felt was that really sort of told the story of what was going on in each school, because one of the things that we're finding is quarantines are not just quarantines, because you have self-directed quarantines by parents who realize that their family has been exposed and so therefore they keep their child home on their own, versus quarantines that either the nurses or the health department direct. So we're going to start sharing that information and just give folks a little bit better context about what's going on in the schools. And just so everybody knows too, the Oregon Health Authority actually releases a public report weekly that shows all positive cases that occur within public schools in the state of Oregon. So it is public information anyway.
So it takes some planning and some movement and some activity on the part of the school district in order to open schools. So tonight I've asked Kurt Sloper and Leland Bliss to talk to you about what is being done at the middle school to prepare to bring all students back to that building. We originally were thinking that we absolutely couldn't get them in there. A team went over there, walked around. We thought some more and we prioritized. And so there's some activity going on over there that will allow us to bring students back. So Kurt?
Before we go to Kurt, can I just ask a question about the metrics? Is there any way to know in that case count how many of those students, how many of those positive cases are school-aged kids?
So I can completely and honestly tell you at this point, we do not have school-aged kids with COVID. So I suppose there's a way to put that out there, but right now we haven't had it. So I think the categories that Jason and the nurses put together were probably a reflection of our experience. If we end up with students quarantined, we have to be very careful about information, as you know, but I think that would be very interesting to people, and we'll check to see if we can do that.
The reason I ask, we shouldn't be assembling our own data, but if it's available in the public domain, then it's certainly worth noting. If we don't get safe harbor and we get back to a place where we, are in those high numbers, but we can say none of our kids have it, then, I think that's part of our argument for why we need to have a more lenient standard, but we need to have the data in order to argue the case.
Right.
Yes.
So that's why I'm asking about it. Now, I want to be clear that I understand there are two sides of the equations. It's not just about the kids, it's also about the staff, and we need to be concerned about both. But to get a really good perspective, we have to look at both sets of data. So that's my.
And we do quarantine students who are primary exposed. experiencing primary exposure, which means they were exposed to someone who was
Right.
potentially contagious. So we have had a few students who have been quarantined by adults who have exposed them. So we will talk to our nurses and our health department about what that looks like to put that information out. And certainly, you know, the health department has information probably that's greater than ours that comes from outside of the school district.
So has there been any trackable cases of COVID to any of our staff coming through the school district itself?
No, there has not. Our staff has been exposed outside of school and has then tested and become positive. I will say this, that staff have connected with staff, like a positive staff member has connected with another staff member, and then they've had to be quarantined. And Joel and Jason help me with this, but I can't tell you of someone who, I think there's one at the middle school that we couldn't trace. We don't know where that person picked it up, but that is the only one that I know of that could have potentially gotten it from another adult in the school.
I think the cleanest way to say it is to today, we've had no known transmissions occur at school.
Right.
And that is correct. I was in Kimberly Bonner's office on Friday, and Wendy Perrin, one of our nurses, came in and have said they cannot, and with the health department's help, cannot and have not determined that any of the cases that staff have picked up have occurred within the buildings. It's all been picked up outside. And then the other thing I can confirm with today's data is going back to the week of Thanksgiving, there have been 0 student positive cases in our district that anybody knows of.
There are some places throughout the district where we have barriers up between an adult and a student, or barriers up between an adult and an adult. Everyone wears masks. We have tried to be very vigilant in wearing the mask correctly, pull them all the way up, and continue the 6 feet. So there's a lot of things going on. We have heightened our cleaning even one more notch, and we realize we may need to, there might be a need to add staff as we add more kids, but we'll cross that bridge soon.
One of the things that ODE brought up is the growing body of research nationally, globally, that shows that schools don't spread COVID-19. One of the early phrases you heard a lot was following the science. And they said, by following the science, you can make the argument that schools should be open because the science is showing that they are not spreaders of the virus.
Just a comment that I heard from my daughter-in-law. She has more kindergarten students that are at 100% attendance at almost Christmas break than she's ever had, because there is no flu, there is no colds, there's no sore throats. It's just like they're healthier because maybe we're sanitizing everything 4 or 5 times a day.
The health department told us too that the flu numbers down as compared to flu numbers this year are way down as compared to other years. I thought that was an interesting piece of information. Okay, Kurt.
Okay, Kurt.
Are we ready?
I am ready. Sound check. You guys hear me all right?
Hear you well. Thank you.
Good. Excellent. So Leland has been working with our school extensively here in the last 4 weeks, and we've had a kind of a combination of a couple things that have come together for us. The first of which is that in our preparation for having all students back throughout the fall, we continued to calculate a number or an enrollment number that was consistent with the last couple of years. And so we were preparing for a number closer to 700 students. And as we're nearing Christmas break right now, our enrollment's at about 580. And some of, as you guys know, a lot of that is for different reasons, people pursuing online options or the homeschool partner program. But that number has been a number that's worked in our favor when trying to set up a school model where we could have all students back in the building at the middle school. And so a few of the actions that have taken place by Leland and his crew are we've remodeled a classroom. We took a specific space that was the size of a classroom. It wasn't used as a classroom. And we ripped out some stairs, ran into some tile that needed to be demoed. We're installing carpet. If anybody wants to help me pick out carpet colors tomorrow, swing on by, because Kimberly's gone and that's used to be her job when she was assistant principal. But we've converted that into a classroom space. We've also identified some additional spaces around our building. The next wave on deck, if we need it, would be to remodel some spaces like our staff room, our ISS room. We've even looked at our possible weight room as a remodel. But right now, we've repurposed a couple different spaces into classrooms. We have posted an additional 6th grade FTE social studies position. And Leland additionally is helping get some storage items out of our building so that we can convert that into classroom space. And had I think it's about a 40-foot Connex box container brought in for storage. Our school model has kind of a tiered approach with those things and the added FTE and at our current enrollment. We could have our students all students return on campus and could have our students rotating through the halls in a very traditional type of fashion. We would continue to have different passing times for different grade levels and for the 2 different teams on each grade level to maintain our cohorting. And we would add additional lunch sections into the schedule as well to keep the cohorting. We feel like we can't have an entire grade level in the hall at the same time. Close to 200 students in the same part of the building in the same hallway at the same time is beyond the gray area of the guidelines and the mandates through the OD. And we're just not comfortable with that yet. And so, but like I said, we've looked at some other alternatives there within our passing time and our bell schedule. We feel like we can have all of our students back at 580 students. We will reach an eventual threshold, and I think it's probably somewhere around 620 students. And this is where our model might have to shift a little bit, where if our classroom sizes exceed their capacities, then we would have our teachers rotate, and the students would have to stay put. That's not our favorite model, but that's option number 2. And the reason that works in our building is because we have classes of different sizes. And so as our enrollment grows, we will essentially start to put students in those bigger classrooms that can hold them. But then those students can't move around in the building because they'll run into smaller classrooms. And so that's why we would eventually reach that point where the teachers might have to rotate instead of the students. But initially, the student day would be very normal. We feel like this is something we can do. We've identified future spots with Leland that we can repurpose as well. And then, a distant third option would be to consider, a grade level off campus somewhere else within the district. But I appreciate Dr. Johnson giving us an opportunity to try to make this work on our own campus first with these first 2 options. But having said all that, essentially, this is something that we can do.
As we get closer to winter or summer, the facilities group will probably be asking to get permission to move some walls within the middle school this summer, with the idea being that we may not gain rooms, but we're going to try to level out. There's some rooms that only hold 17 or 18 students. There's some that'll hold probably 40 if you wanted to. And so the idea is to get a uniform size so we can have uniform classes so those classes can rotate.
Mhm.
But we'll get back to you on that.
Great. Thanks for your hard work on that. I know that that probably was not the easiest planning exercise ever. Appreciate it.
Kurt, do we know how many of your, reduced 100 and some odd kids are in the Homelink program?
I can't remember that number off the top of my head, and I know that I've heard it at one time. I want to say there's 50. If Johnny's still on here, he might know, or Marcus.
Let's pass that over to Dr. Hoff.
I think it's closer to the 60 to 80 range. I know there's been some back and forth. I think the high was 80 or so.
Does it seem to be stabilizing?
Yes. I think so. We still see a lot of families searching for options that they feel will be most successful, because no matter what, any of these options can be difficult for a variety of reasons. So we still have students moving around, but I would say compared to the first couple months of the year or the first month back from the transition, it's more stable now than it's ever been.
So Nancy Eberhard put in the chat that they have 55 middle school students in her program right now.
Wonder if we have a sense of how many of those students might want to come back into the building if it were full-time in the building instead of only part-time in the building?
The answer to that right now is they don't necessarily know. So when we ask, they still say undecided. Not everyone. Some people want to finish what they started this year and then see where it goes and make that decision as they walk farther into this. So there's really not good answers to that yet.
And I think if they have confidence that students returning back is a permanent thing, and there's not a chance of kind of that yo-yo back and forth or any uncertainty, we might see more people come back for the one-to-one. But I also definitely agree that there's a lot of people that are, very happy with their placements, and we may see some come back, and others may finish the year.
And more information for the board, Michael Allen just looked up the number in Grizzly Mountain, and we have 60 6th through 9th grade students in Grizzly Mountain. So that's 55 plus 60. I'm sure Doug has that added like that. 150.
115.
I just want to take a minute and say to our parents that are watching.
6 through 8. Sorry, Scott.
I just want to say to our parents that are watching, we get that this is an incredibly difficult time for parents and students alike. This isn't what your board, want for our students. We want to have open, thriving schools that you want to be in and have no question about wanting to be in. And I'm sorry that we're in the situation that we're in. We, along with you, can't wait to not be here soon enough. And we do hear how frustrating this is for everybody. And it's frustrating for me as a parent. I just throw that in there.
And I'd also like to say that what Scott just said applies to our teaching staff and everybody else. Is we just got to do what we can to take care of our kids and our students and our parents, and this will be over and we will be back to a more normal type world soon.
Okay, update on planning for distance learning.
Thank you, Kurt. And then this is going to come from Kimberly and Joel.
Yeah, so this is just a follow-up to the board. We switched December 4th from a regular student conduct day to a teacher professional work day. But in doing so, we wanted to make sure there were clear outcomes and desires that we were wishing for teachers to accomplish during this day. So those are in your board packet. Dr. Johnson put forward 7 objectives, as well as we also did a staff fireside chat that morning. In order to get kind of a hand, boots on the ground feel, Kimberly Bonner is going to share just how the day went at her school, so you guys can get a sense of what it looked like in person.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Sometimes it's hit or miss. First of all, I just want to thank you for giving that time to staff. It was very beneficial. We started out our time together just as a full staff, and that ended up 2 hours were gone before we knew it because we were brainstorming. I think the best part of the day was the K-3 teachers learning from the 4-5 teachers who had already experienced comprehensive distance learning. And there were so many ideas shared. Really well thought out ideas. At one point, I wanted to share with you that we were having a conversation about whether something should be a school-wide decision or whether something should be a grade level decision. And we'd been sitting for way too long. And so I said, okay, everybody out in the hallway, space yourselves out. We're going to do an AVID strategy of philosophical chairs, which is where it's a great way to decide something. So we said, everybody who thinks that it should be a school-wide decision, stand on this wall. Everybody who thinks it should be a grade level decision, stand on this wall. And then we were sharing the whys behind it. And then as you change your mind, you cross over to the other side. So it ended up just being a really fun time. And I think the thing that I've been the most impressed with is the amount of staff members who have stood up and just stepped into leadership roles without even being asked. The amount of wanting and willingness to share with each other things that they've learned about technology has just really been another way that our staff has bonded through this whole situation. So very purposeful use of time. After our brainstorming session, grade levels went back and did a lot of planning on their own. And so then that was Friday. Then when the decision was made on Monday to go ahead and move to comprehensive distance learning, it was like, well, we already know what we're doing. Like, well, bam, let's just get this sucker rolling. So by the time the kids left, I mean, we decided that we would start sending stuff home Wednesday, Thursday, devices go home on Friday. It was like a well-oiled machine. We were so impressed. And the amount of communication that it went out to families, I even had families reach out and say, thank you so much for the communication through the whole process. So if we hadn't had that Friday, I'm not sure that it would have gone as smooth as it did. So just want to, again, thank you for that time. It was very worthwhile.
Mr. Chairman.
Well,
I really like what I just heard. I think we could have her and her process help us with our goal setting, maybe. I'm not joking. I'm serious.
Well, my question for you, Kimberly, was that snapping thing you just did. Is that a mom snap or a principal snap? Because you really got that down.
Or a husband snap. Rob just made a comment to the
yeah, that's probably what it was.
Lots of training.
Very effective. Other questions for Kimberly or about distance learning? Sounds like it was a good day.
It was a great day. Thank you.
Update on outdoor school.
And this will go back to Kurt.
Yes, it will. Let me just pull up my notes real quick. So where we're at with outdoor school, we are, again, if there's one thing I've learned in the last 8 months is you have to have options. In different tiers, stay nimble as information changes. And so what we've known, I don't know if the board was aware of this in the last update or not. Our camp provider at Settle Lake is currently closed through April 15th, through the first quarter of 2021. And they are a part of the United Methodist church. They own camps all over the country anyway. And all of their camps are shut down right now. And they are making a decision after the first of the year, looking at mandates, looking at essentially the viability and the profitability of them even being open. In fact, the camp directors that have lived on site at our camp, there's situations where their camp could just be closed for 2021. So I've reached out to Sarah Cuddy, who is not only a Crook County High School alumni, she's also the outdoor school coordinator for the state of Oregon at the OSU Extension Office, and she out of Baker, and she facilitates the legislative funds across the country that support outdoor school. And statewide, there doesn't seem to be anybody quite trying to do what we're doing with a full off-site overnight option. There are options that different organizations like OMSI or Camp Tamarack and similar types of camps are doing virtual activities or programming on school sites, but the traditional full off-site overnight option, we seem to be, it's not new for us to be in something that no one else is, or a challenge that no one else is taking on like we are. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a plan. And so what we want to do is, through the month of January, we want to stay in close communication with our current provider. We feel like that is the experience that our community and our students want. They want the traditional Crook County outdoor school experience with the same traditions, and drinking water from the headwaters of Jack Creek, and the hike around Subtle Lake, and the pranks of having Harvey the Rock at the end of the day at dinner time. And so we're still trying to make this first option work. And so what we've basically arrived on is, if our camp is open, if we are open, then we feel like we could put together a grade level camp in May that would probably target our 7th grade. And if we have to purchase an extra week of camp, we'll do that to lower the numbers, because that rule of 35 square feet in those 12 by 12 cabins, it forces us to have more counselors. It requires us to take up more space at camp. And if we need to purchase another week and get 4 weeks instead of 3 to get a grade level in, we'll do it. But we would look at taking a group this spring. And then if for some reason, whether it's us, whether it's our camp provider that can't make this happen, the timeline that we are looking at going into the 21-22 school year is that we would do an 8th grade fall camp. Then we would do a 7th grade spring camp. And then in school year 22-23, we'd do a 7th grade fall camp and get back into that 6th grade spring camp. And so it would take us 2 years of running 2 camps a year, one in the spring and one in the fall, but we would still be able to reach all of our students and then get it back to return it to a 6th grade camp option. So that's option number 2. But our first option right now is to stay in close communication. Hopefully things change here, or at least our camp providers in a position to be open in the spring. And then we can go from there. I've been in conversation with Michelle about the need for counselors, and maybe a few more counselors than we're used to. And that's a challenge that she has been glad to talk about with me. I know it's always a hard one. But I just appreciate her willingness to try to make that happen for us, because that camp counselor dynamic is really one of the most special components of our model.
Kurt, that's really forward planning, and I really appreciate that. And I love what you said about, just because nobody else is doing it doesn't mean we can't. That's been the spirit of this district since we started. So thank you for that. Do you need additional resources if you're going to operate that many camps and you're going to all camp all the time? Do we need to build that into budget?
There would be some, I think that's probably a kind of a next step conversation with Anna, probably not at this time. I mean, I'm thankful for the opportunity through, through OSU Extension. Those funds, I believe, will be there for us to run both of a fall and a spring camp. Traditionally, we haven't pulled, or not traditionally, in the last couple of years, I can't remember what House bill it was, camp has been funded from the state, and those funds are still there. The requirements are even more lenient now than they were in the year before, according to Sarah Cuddy. And so I think, us being able to do things like purchase an additional week of camp to keep the numbers down so we can meet the guidelines, that's huge. Running 2 camps a year, there could be some stressors on pulling some teachers out of the classroom. It looks like right now this spring we're very doubtful about OSAS, testing, spring state testing. But in future, next year and the year after, those could be things that we're working around. That's always been a difficulty with 6th grade camp, is it's right in the middle of testing season. And so finagling that and wrangling testing schedules with camp, they don't necessarily go hand in hand. But there could be some additional resources, but when it comes to making things happen, usually that's just a quick conversation with Dr. Johnson and we find a way.
And I'd call you, Scott, and go down to Anna's office and.
You just call me and cry and I say, pick yourself up. Keep going. We're going to get through this on the worst days. Okay, so board, I've asked the superintendent to keep this on our agenda, not because there's anything we can necessarily do about it. It's the virus that dictates the pace, but I know there's huge concern among community members who don't want their kids to lose that opportunity and feel like last year was a lost year. So this is a conduit to let the community know what we know in the spirit of transparency, which is never certain, but it's on everybody's mind. So we'll keep hearing about this every couple of months as the situation changes. Okay, any other questions about that? We don't see any. So that brings us to planning discussion.
Can't hear you, Scott.
Report. This brings
okay.
us to the concussion report.
All right, and that one is, of course, we have Rob Bonner who's doing some amazing work there, and then Joel has put together a presentation.
All right, so concussions have definitely been a hot topic around here, and for a couple of reasons. We have 2 concussion-related reports. The first is a headband pilot study that we are doing that Rob, as well as Michael Estes, I believe, is on, our athletic trainer. And then we're also collaborating with the University of Oregon on a research study related to concussion. So we figured we'd just group them together and provide a updated concussion report. To give you a little backstory, so here are concussion numbers for the last 4 years, both athletic and non-athletic related concussions that at least have been reported to us. We're averaging about 12 a year. In looking at other districts, that's about the average. Some are a little higher, some are a little lower. So we're kind of right in the middle there. Rob's going to talk about a really exciting pilot that we have going. So Rob, if you can hear me, you're up.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hoff. So it's probably a month ago or a little more now, Dr. Johnson and Dr. Hoff and I got together and we were looking at the possibility of offering something that would protect our kids even further than the steps we're already taken. The Halo 3 headband pilot, I'm excited for. The Halo 3 headband it looks just like a headband. You can see it there. And all the reports say, the ball bounces well off the head. People like wearing it. They don't feel like it's wearing anything different other than a headband. And as you know, if kids don't like it or if they think they look silly and or whatever the fact may be, they're not going to wear them or not going to elect to wear them. So we like this Halo 3 headband for that reason. And our ladies soccer team has volunteered to pilot it starting February 22nd. So we're very excited for that. It's also going to be available to any athlete, male or female, regardless of the sport, if it fits into the uniform, who want to wear that. So if there's an athlete that has suffered a concussion, A lot of the literature states it makes kids feel better. The confidence is there to go out and continue to play hard. So, all the reports, all the literature, the things I've read, we're excited to pilot this.
All right, if no questions there, I'll just briefly go over the University of Oregon study that we're piloting with them. It's through the Center of Brain Research that's stationed at the U of O. This will start happening right after winter break, where we'll send out a letter to parents just so that everyone's in the loop on what this is and how it works. If a student gets a concussion and then they come and report it to their coach or athletic trainer or Rob or a school nurse, then the school will let these researchers know, hey, we have a student or a family that is experiencing a concussion. The U of O researchers will then contact that family and say, hey, we heard you have a concussion. Here's the kind of study we're doing. Would you like to be involved? And if the family says no, they say, great, let us know if we can help any way. If the family says yes, then the researchers will begin working with them every month, doing a check-in where they answer a certain set of questions. And the whole point of it is so the researchers can track the impact that the concussion had on the student's academic experience. Once it's about a year study, and then they're also conducting the exact same study in Ohio. And then they'll compare our study and our research to students in Ohio and look at how we can better serve students that have gone through a concussion. So it was an exciting opportunity that we thought there was no downside for our families, and we can help serve our families and also serve the broader research regarding concussions and their impact on the academic experience. So we're excited to partner with the U of O on that.
Okay. I would just want to tell a personal story. My daughter seems to be concussion prone. We've had 2 of these. And a couple of weeks ago, she was playing soccer, and when we were still playing soccer, and took a direct hit to the head. Fortunately, she had a concussion band on, that fashion icon or not, her parents have been making her wear. And that hit that she got should have sent her right back into the concussion we had last year. That band somehow absorbed the energy, and we had no side effects from it. There is no way, given the nature of that hit, that we should not have had more. So I was somewhat skeptical of this thin little ugly piece of rubber before, but I am a complete convert to it, having personally seen it. So we'll see what the uptake is. They're not as pretty as that one that they showed in the picture right there. I can tell you that.
We have
Well,
ways
in
we can make
February,
ours even prettier.
We'll get her a new one in February. Joel, will we
back.
get any of the research reports or anything from U of O?
Usually if you participate, they give you a kind of advanced copy. I'll definitely be looking for that and make sure to share it if we do get it.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that? We good? Thank you. Who's leading this?
This is
Leland or Doug or?
This is Anna is going to lead off.
Okay, Anna.
Good evening. I have a timeline in front of you that the board members may have seen before, but it has been slightly edited since the last publication. First off, I want to tell you that you'll see at the top of the screen where it says new bond. Know that this is a hypothetical timeline that has not been approved by the board, but is based on what the construction committee hopes will be reality. So I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see sections of it at a time. So we're currently in December of 2020, and this timeline has been built with the concept of a new bond. I'm going to go back one, a bond election in May of 2022. So we're starting right now to be prepared, because if we are able to go out for a bond in May of 2022, there is a grant opportunity available to all school districts in Oregon. It's OSCIM, and we pronounce it awesome. And so we're preparing for that. One of the things that you have to do in order to receive that grant is a long-range facility plan and a facilities assessment. So in building our plan, working towards a bond measure, we're starting that process of preparing for those two assessments. Moving forward on here, if the bond election was in May of 2022, we would be able to, this is backwards, back up. We would be able to apply for that bond, that awesome grant in early September of 2021. So basically what you're seeing is just the district preparing by getting the necessary steps in place so that we have the opportunity for the awesome grant should the board decide to go out for a bond in May of 2022. So this is kind of a two-part agenda topic. We have this overall concept of the timeline, which means that if we were to issue a bond in May of 2022, we could be ready to start our bond spending process a lot sooner than we were the last time because just more experience and having gone through it, we'll know to start getting ready for things before the bonds actually sell. And then we can start construction of whatever, if we decide to do construction, or you've heard us talk about deferred maintenance. There's boilers and roofs that need to be replaced. I've actually been keeping a list every time a board member or a director says, with our next bond, we need to consider such and such. I have a running list of all those things. So I don't know what would be in that bond at this point, because obviously that takes a wider group of people making that decision. So tonight in agenda topic 6.1.1, we're asking the board for approval of a contractor, an architect, which is not something that we would normally ask the board because it's only a $25,000, $20,000 thing. Normally, we only bring expenditure approvals to the board if it's over $150,000. However, in the awesome grant application, there's a requirement for the board to approve the hiring of the architect that does the long-range facility assessment. So that's why we're bringing this to you tonight and asking for approval of the selection of BLRB as our architect to perform this. And I want you to know that we have taken all the usual and required steps to formally review the proposals from 3 different firms before making the selection to choose BLRB.
Questions?
How long does the awesome approval last? So if we go on this timeline and submit this year, does that mean we have to go out in May of 2022? Or does that mean, you know, could we go out in May of 2023? Or how long does that awesome guarantee hold?
We believe that we could, it goes for a calendar year. So we would be able to go out for a May 2022 or a November 2022, because we had that same question, and it's either a calendar year or we're sure that May or November, maybe longer.
So what happens if we have to have multiple elections to get to yes, which sometimes happens?
We just have to resubmit our application and turn our facilities assessment and long-range plan in again the following calendar year for either one of the elections.
Okay. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve BLRB Architects as the firm to conduct our facilities assessment and write and facilitate our long-range facilities plan.
Second.
Mr. Smith moved, Ms. Dora seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None, the motion passes. Okay, you need anything else from us on that, Anna? Doug, anything from the facilities committee? Since we're in that area.
So we're gonna look at a couple of other things and just on the side as far as costs, just to be able to know them. One of them is maybe how much does it cost to put the air conditioning in Barnes Butte Elementary, maybe before a bond or whatever, and just so we know those numbers. And just gives us options and what ifs. But other than that, we're doing really, really good. The concentration has been on what does it take to get students back in all of our schools full time and make sure that facilities aren't the reason we can't do it. And so that's where we'll be focusing for the next little bit here while they're working on the facilities piece.
Sounds good. Okay, the next item is the superintendent evaluation process, and this is going to be shorter than I expected. My job after the last planning meeting was to email to the board the evaluation instruments, and tonight was going to be spent picking our favorite evaluation instrument. I did pull my evaluation instruments, and then I got into a big thing over the weekend with the state of Oregon about that never should have been a thing. And I forgot to mail them to you. So they're sitting here on my computer screen. I can see them, but you can't. So I need to mail them to you, and I don't want you to just pick one with 1 minute's notice. So what I'd like to do is just have a very quick special board meeting in a couple of weeks, and or maybe next week. And after you've had a chance to look them over and just pick our instrument, I'm talking about 30 minutes at max board meeting. And we'll pick our instrument and get our process underway. So I apologize. That's too many things happening at one time at end of the year. So sorry about that. I will email to me right after this meeting because they're very accessible since they're sitting on the screen in front of me. Okay, that take care of that. Strategic planning update. Superintendent, you had emailed us all the latest write-up of the strategic plan, and there are still tweaks happening. So do you want to talk about?
Yes, we will. So if I could please get Dr. Hoff to put up what I believe that we shared with you. And I received comments back and modified the document. And then I believe that it is getting very close to ready, but we like the transparency of sharing it with our community. So as Scott suggested, we think the next step would be to put this onto the website and see if we get any public comment on it. The other thing that we would be pleased with is if you think of anything, if you have any late changes to that, we would gladly take those and add those in. And then Dr. Hoff and I have been talking about how to report this out to you regularly. And we have a very cool instrument that Dr. Hoff has visualized, and we then looked at it together, but we think that it could turn into something that becomes useful not only to you, but as a communication tool. Do you want to explain this, Joel? If you would unmute. Oh, I've never caught him unmuted before.
There you go. It only took about 7 months of Zoom. Let me put that back up. So I think it was actually Doug Smith, I remember about 3 years ago, I think when we were reviewing board goals before, talked about, having some sort of dashboard that the board could use that we revisit to just kind of gauge the progress we're making. And as these goals were being developed, I felt it was a good opportunity to revisit that dashboard opportunity. So this is just something we, Dr. Johnson and I kind of put together where we would bring this to you multiple times a year as data got updated, just to update you on the progress. This first page would be all the academic data, like the number of students on track by grade level, K-8 reading level, math level, writing level, as well as some attendance data, ensuring the percentage of kids that are off track that are enrolled in summer transition programs or summer credit recovery programs. Here we would track the facilities improvement, our COVID and post-COVID response, as well as those items that we would be reporting on once a month. So it was really just a way to keep the data in front of you guys and not have our board goals, sit on the shelf one year, pull them out for one meeting, and then put them back on the shelf. So creating a dashboard that would keep you guys in the loop on those key indicators. So you could kind of track the academic, the facilities planning, and all the improvements. So it's kind of still getting felt out and refined, but that's kind of where we're headed. And I'll give Doug Smith credit for 3 years ago, because he said something that kind of stuck with me.
And so really the input from the board would be, as we put the goals onto the website and send out a communication for our community to look those over, and then for you to hear what the community, the staff, parents, anyone says about that. And then we would bring that back to you with that on an addendum, and then you could look at those goals and see what you wanted to do to them. This doesn't change the work. We've been staying with the work, sticking with the work, trying to do the right work every day. But I think this would give us something to use and perhaps try it out as we move forward and see how you like the format and how it works for you.
Good feedback. Good feedback.
The thought here is we put it on the website. Board members can comment if they have additional thoughts. Public can comment, staff can comment. If nobody comments, which is often what happens, this will go on the consent agenda at the next meeting. If there's comment to work through, then we'll put it on as a regular board agenda. We'll work through the comment. You'll see the comments before the meeting. So
we will also send, Dr. Hoff can also send the dashboard to you. And I think people read that kind of data differently. If it looks like it's going the right direction, if you like the size of it, if you like how it is reporting to you, then you can give us that feedback, and that could be adjusted so that it's a useful tool for you as well. And again, we just want to be sure that this is doing what you need it to do.
And Mr. Chairman, I really like this, but I think the board also would like to be informed on why it's going the right direction. I mean, there's so much involved, but it's nice to know why it's happening.
Sure. Okay, that do it? Other
I'm
questions?
excited.
Pretty pictures, Doug. We know you like them. Pity we
I
have
have to
letters and
always
not
go back
hieroglyphs.
and I just really feel that I need to thank Joel for the thought that he puts in it and the way that he works alongside me and the way he worked with Jerry to try to make it into something that is really readable. So appreciate his support on that.
You know me in charts.
Excuse me. One more comment. I'd like to say that one thing this does that I see, it's got everyone involved. Everybody has their fingers in the pie, and it's going to be pretty good pie, I think. Thank you.
Okay, that's what we shall do then. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Yes, Walt, minimum process by the board, maximum process by the public, just what you like. Okay, finance report, Anna.
I have a finance report for you in the packet under 7.1. The regular finance report includes a general fund projection and all the regular reports. They're not that much different from the prior month. I do have a couple other topics of interest, but want to give you an opportunity to ask questions on the finance report before I proceed.
Anna, I had a question on the all funds fiscal report. We have a number of funds for special projects at each school. And I'm just wondering, where do those funds come from?
Those funds come from various places. Each school has a student body fund that they use from fundraising, but then there are other funds that are not from student fundraising and don't require student approval. There are things that like a donor would donate specifically to a school. And so we have those funds that are designated for that school. And then there's a lot of sub-funds within those funds that have various designations with restrictions from donors.
Okay, because I noticed we have $4 in the fund for brothers, which makes me wonder what kind of special projects we would be doing out there, or if we're limiting their ability to do the kinds of things that get done at the other schools.
So when we receive a donation that's restricted for a certain purpose, we don't spend it on anything but that specific purpose. So if there's $4 remaining, that'll either sit there until we have another purchase that is for within that purpose, or sometimes some of those grants get replenished. So there's so many of them that $4 is not the only resource that school has.
Okay, thank you.
Anna, along those same lines, what about the funds with the negative balances? Do those just get wiped out at the end of the year with general fund transfers, or?
No, a lot of times those, that does look weird. I get why you're asking that question. A lot of times the reason those funds are negative is because we are prepaying and then getting reimbursed. For example, all of our title and all of our IDEA are done on a reimbursement basis. So we have to incur those expenses first, and then we process a claim and get that reimbursement. So at the end of the year, those funds are zero.
Makes sense.
So Anna, when I look at our revenue for the month of November, it was higher than normal, which is I'm assuming is property tax. Was the property tax, did it come in higher than we thought it would be based on evaluation, or?
I'm projecting that the property tax will come in at about 3% over budget. What you're seeing for November, I don't know if you remember last year, several times last year I said, the revenue looks strange because there's a timing issue with property taxes. It was last year that the property taxes just came in at weird times. And so it was different than normal. And this year I feel like it's gone back to a normal. So we're in a new normal year that still looks weird compared to last year, which last year was the weird year. So it is just that the property taxes have returned to what I feel is more of a normal state.
But we do expect them to be 3% higher, which will generate, based on what we levied for the bond, a little bit extra, which means next year we'll be down a little bit on the bond service.
The bond is levied at the actual dollar amount needed to pay for the debt. So what you're seeing on the general fund, that'll fluctuate based on property values and the number of homes and those kinds of things. But on the bond, that's in a different fund and a different type, where we just tell the tax assessor we need X number of dollars to be assessed. So they just assess that amount of money and they assess it across all of the properties. So that one doesn't fluctuate at all.
Okay.
Unless
because they know how much the valuation is before they assess it.
Right, exactly. The only thing that can cause an issue with that is if collections don't come in like they normally would. So if collections drop down, people aren't paying their property taxes, that can have an impact on the amount of money we receive. But we build in a little bit of cushion for that. It's just that if something were to happen that would make it bigger of an impact than the cushion that we have in there, that could be a problem.
Thank you.
Other questions on the financials?
So I had a couple other things I just wanted to tell you that I thought might be of interest to you. The first is a school meal update. So just a little bit of background. We have 3 programs through USDA that we operate. We have a supper program, SUPPER. We have a summer program, SUMMER. And then we have a breakfast/lunch program. The supper program feeds kids without regard to eligibility. So the students don't have to apply, the parents don't have to apply for free and reduced. Everybody gets supper for free. The summer program is the same way. There's no eligibility process. All the students who want a meal get a meal for free. The breakfast and lunch program is the one that requires the eligibility process for a free and reduced lunch application. For the breakfast and lunch program, this year, there were new state income guidelines in place that are much more generous than the federal guidelines. So the families that apply, we actually use the higher state income guidelines, which means you can make more money and qualify for free than you can under the federal. So people have been applying, and we've been giving them eligibility based on those new state guidelines. But what has happened is ODE has extended summer meals to allow us to provide our breakfast and our lunch under the summer meals program. So all the students are able to eat under the summer meals program without regard to eligibility. All the students are getting free summer meals. It's the same breakfast and the same lunch that we would normally provide. There may be some slight tweaks to it, but the kids are all getting that breakfast and lunch provided for them. So that does have a few impacts, which most are good. First is just all kids get to eat for free regardless of their eligibility. The second is that our unpaid meal balance charges have not been increasing for the first time that any of us could remember. One of the concerns is that when parents don't have the motivation to apply, anytime we offer free meals, that it reduces that motivation to apply for free and reduced lunch, which could have an impact on your title funding and various other things that are affected by your free and reduced lunch percentages. I'm not super worried about that right now. Our current free and reduced percent is 44%, and last year at this time it was 48%. So, and then thinking about all the other districts in the state, their families are probably much less likely to be motivated to apply for free and reduced because they're not even going to school. So that's just information for you that I just thought you might find interesting.
It would be interesting to know how many of our students are actually taking advantage of that.
The higher income guidelines?
No, the free lunches.
We have numbers. We in order to claim our reimbursement for those meals, we have to track the number of students that eat at each one of those meals.
It'd just be interesting to know how much it had gone up, and are we at 70% or 40% or and that also might be something that if we communicated it to the parents vividly, that the parents may say, okay, eat at the high school instead of going downtown at lunch, and drive usage of the great food that our food services department is putting out now.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if it makes a difference at the high school. For the most part, at the elementary and middle school, we've got pretty standard, pretty close to 100% eating because they can't go anywhere. At the high school, I don't think it was the cost that keeps them from eating on campus. It's being on campus.
Yeah, I think you'll find there's a lot of kids at the middle school and the high school and the elementaries that's maybe packing brown sack lunches that their parents don't know about this. I just think we need to make sure we communicate it better.
Anecdotally, I've heard that kids will go off campus and they come back and grab one of those sack lunches. So they're theoretically eating 2 meals. I know that for a fact.
That's what I do.
I know a few teenage boys that have done that.
Well, and I would just observe that from the food bank standpoint, because Neighbor Impact operates the regional food bank, demand for food is up 56% right now. We're where we were a year ago. So there's hunger out there in the community, and people are finding ways to get additional food. I wouldn't be surprised if those extra sacks of food go home as an extra meal.
Excuse me, but I had a little meeting today with Jessica Ritter, the charter schools, and I ran across somebody in that meeting, who had raves about the food coming from our district out there.
Oh, good.
I just think that you should be aware of that, and they're extremely happy with that food.
Good.
And then the other topic that I just want to give you an update about is the student investment account from the Student Success Act. We have been notified that based on the governor's budget for the next biennium, assuming it passes, we can expect next year's SIA, Student Investment Account budget, to be 2.5 times this year's budget. So that would be about $2.1 million next year. We still have to stay within the original SIA plan, which shouldn't be a problem because we originally budgeted for 2.4 per year. So that's just some really good news to pass on. Thanks to Joel for bringing that information in and managing that SIA grant.
And making it look easy.
And you also have on the agenda the non-represented salary scale update.
Sure, I can go right into that. So we put a cover sheet in the board packet under 7.2. The cover sheet just kind of summarizes the work that has been done so far and outlines the procedural changes that we believe the board will regard as improvements. We have received a few questions from Patty about the compensation analysis, and I expect to potentially receive a few more questions from other board members. I want to compile all that information together and send it all out to you so that you all have the same information. Just know that this is a developing and an in-process endeavor. The board is seeing the train of thought as the train of thought tracks are being built.
So
in February.
If we're going to see the proposal in May or June, which would be fine for budget, that does necessarily mean that the non-represented probably won't necessarily be in sync with what represented is getting, because we won't know those numbers yet. We're almost never settled by May or June. Right?
Right. The concept would be after we settle, then we would bring it to the board, whether that's May or June or July.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's not necessarily going to come out.
Yeah, just follow the same timeline that we've done in the past. The big change is that you'll see something. Our plan is for you to see something in February, long before we get to the point of the May, June, July timeframe.
Okay, but we won't have to finalize it.
And I would also hope that as we see it, that if there are adjustments that need to be made to it, we appoint a couple of board members or committee to suggest back to the board some tweaks that need to be made to certain salary levels.
I'm taking note of that, Doug. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, we are up to the policy part. I know you're all excited by this. So did Sean get on our call?
He did. He's on now. So he stands ready.
There he is. He's at the bottom of screen 2. That's what happens. So I just want to start by acknowledging Sean with this policy. When this first came in from the state and I looked at it and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm not sure we could ever put that in front of the board the way that's written. So I asked Sean to go out and do a lot of research around other districts that have grappled with the same issue and see what best practices were and best language and how they did community relations on this. And Sean did an amazing job of rewriting this and getting it into the current form that you see in front of you. I have had at least one call from another district asking what we were doing because they assumed if anybody had done the work right, it would be us, and wanted to copy our draft. So, Sean, good job. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and there's lots to imitate in our district, and you have done it again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we have this policy ACB. Now, this policy is the one being handed to us by the state of Oregon. It was adopted in an administrative rule, and we are required as a district to adopt some version of it. So with that, it's in front of you. It had first read at the last meeting, and so this is second read. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith.
I move the board adopt policy ACB, all students belong, and ACB AR bias incident complaint procedure as presented.
Second.
Doug. Patty seconded. So Mr. Smith, Ms. Norris. Okay. Under discussion, does anybody have anything to say? I'm looking straight into your eyes, Wolf. You can't tell it, but I am.
You're looking at who?
You.
I do have something to say.
I imagine that.
Yeah, all right.
Almost like I knew.
Okay, well, okay, all right. I'd like to start off by saying, is this policy ACB being implemented to prevent a symbol of hate or just an excuse to remove history, creating a way of manipulating today's young minds without the facts? Okay, that's how I'm going to start. I perceive this OAR as intending to divide parents and community. The teaching of Civil War history would eliminate the need of such a rule, creating a real understanding of the turbulent times and real reasons for the Civil War. I can go on and on and on. I can talk about how the Irish were used as slaves and how the Asenji tribe sent most of the slaves that they captured in Africa over here. And so therefore, we have people in the country right now stomping on the American flag and burning it for various reasons and tearing down statues. And so if we were to use the same standard that they're using on the Confederate flag, which I have no connection to at all, then our American flag hanging on the wall would have to go. It's just simple as that. So if we support this, I just can't support it for a number of reasons. There's so much, if you think the original meaning of the Confederate flag ever had anything to do with racism, you're in a desperate need of true education, because it didn't. That's not what the war was about. Plenty of free Black men fighting for the country they believed in carried this flag into battle and were shot and killed by Lincoln's white soldiers. This flag has just as much white blood on it as it does black blood. It symbolizes a kind of freedom we, white and black, have never tasted. It symbolized a country, not a race. In the information age, ignorance is a choice. I look at this as and I think I said this before, the Oregon Department of Education is not acting like an organization dedicated to education, but more in pushing an agenda. There's no place in politics for any educational or in any educational system. Politics should not be involved. I could go on. I have a lot more here, which I don't need to do. You know where I'm coming from. The flag technically and historically is not a symbol of hate. If it is, so is the American flag. So is the flag of Portugal, and I can go on. Barbados. It takes a little history, a little research to open up our minds, or take the time not to believe everything you read, or try and be indoctrinated by. So that's where I stand, and I do not support it, and I won't support it. I do know that I believe that the charter took some of the verbiage out. I think they took out the specific things like the new swastika and the Confederate flag. So it's something some of the things we might want to consider. But there's too much real history to read before we just accept something and digest something like this. That's it. That's all I have.
Okay, Doug?
So I'll just, I don't want to rewrite history, and I made the motion to pass this, and I'm going to support it. But when I was in grade school, I was told that putting a swastika on anything was, quote, against the law, is kind of how it was told to us kids, right? And so even back then, the swastika was already a symbol of hate. The other thing that I stand on, and I really believe is the thing that evens this out, is we've left in here, it says under about 2/3 of the way down, right behind the red writing that we had taken out, it says that we prohibit it except when used in teaching curriculum that is aligned with the Oregon State standards. We are not rewriting history. We are not changing the history. We are teaching. We are just saying that if a Confederate flag is in a history book, there's nothing wrong with that. If we're teaching about the fact that the Southern states succeeded from the nation, then that's fine. But what we're saying is that displaying a Confederate flag in our schools for no educational purpose is wrong. Displaying a swastika in our schools for non-educational purposes is wrong. Displaying a noose in our schools for non-educational purposes is wrong. And I can support that. I can't support if it said you can't use them at all. If you eliminate that one sentence, except where used in teaching curriculum that is approved by Oregon State standards or the Crook County School Board, then I couldn't support this either. But as long as it's in that we can still teach history the way history has been written, then I have no problems outlawing them for the other purposes.
I can't agree with that, because what I just said, and if you really do your history, I've spent weeks on this, looking up all slavery around the whole world and the time frame, and the same standards apply to the American flag. And so if somebody shows up in school with an American flag on their shirt, the same standards would apply. And if they show up with a Confederate flag on a billfold or on their shirt or something, it should not be considered hate. There's no reason for it to be considered hate. There's some organizations in the country right now that decided it's hate. And those same organizations are now burning the American flag. So is it eventually going to go to that also? I don't agree with this. The swastika, I would not allow the swastika anywhere close to our school. Things like that. The noose should not be around. When it comes to a flag, the flag does not represent hate. Hate has been conjured up by groups in this country, the same groups that are staring down statues. And we're looking at it wrong. Sometimes it comes a time when you have to do the real research, the real history, and go with it.
Okay, do we have other comments from board members? I want to just comment, there's no place in our schools, I don't believe there should be a place in our society for any sort of hostility on the basis of race, color, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin. I believe that the prohibition on these 3 specific symbols is probably unconstitutional under the Oregon Constitution, but I'm a school board member, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge. I don't get to make those decisions. I'm just a school board member adopting a rule that was handed to me by the state of Oregon. So we'll see what the lawyers say when it gets to the lawyers. For now, I'm going to vote for the policy because we need to move this along. I want to say to Walt that I would guess about 20% of the population completely agrees with you, Walt. So the division that's likely to happen on the board is probably the same division we're going to see in society. And with that, let us move to the vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Patty, did you vote yes on that? Come back to you, Patty. All those opposed?
Aye.
Patty, let me ask you again. Did you vote yes on that? I'm going to call this 3-1. Okay. And a motion is passed. Okay. Moving on. We are, just one reminder that you all got an invitation from the health department to a presentation on the HPV vaccine that involves about 6 of our students. I went to that this morning. Gwen went to it as well. There's another session tomorrow night, and if you'd like to hear from some young people who are very passionate about a topic that is alive and well in their group, that's an opportunity for you. So I would encourage you to think about RSVPing to that. Who knows? We need a special meeting date for this evaluation thing. Can you all meet next Monday?
Yes.
First. You good on that, Gwen?
You said it's going to be real brief.
Yeah, probably about 30 minutes.
Okay, I should be able to make that work.
You okay with that, Walt? Could we do 5 o'clock?
Monday at 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That work. Patty, are you back? There you are. You're on, we can't hear you. You're on mute. There's no sound coming through.
Laryngitis.
Yeah, you've disappeared, Patty.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. There you go.
Very odd. Anyway, yes, I'm here. Yes, 5 o'clock on Monday works fine.
Okay, we recorded you as an abstain in that last vote. Do you want to be recorded one way or the other? That was on policy ACB.
Yes, I vote yes on
Vote
ACB.
yes. Okay, so please correct the record. That's a 4-1 vote on that. Sorry, I couldn't get any sound out of you, so I wasn't sure how you're voting. Okay, so 5 o'clock on the 21st, and I swear it'll be 30 minutes. We're not going to take forever on this, and I will send those tonight to you, those evaluation instruments. Sorry about that. Okay, any other business, Superintendent? Are we caught up?
I just
Scott, you guys might want to on this Thursday at 4:30, the ESD is hosting the Central Oregon Legislature Forum.
Yes,
that the board members across the region are going to be in. So might want to give a heads up on that.
Is there anyone planning on participating in that?
I'm sorry, Sarah, say that again.
Is there anyone planning on participating in the legislative forum?
I'll be there.
Did you get links? Did the board get links?
We did at one point.
Right.
You know, earlier this evening, I was on a phone call with the budget director for the state of Oregon, for the governor, and he was giving a preview. He was quite excited about it, about the governor's budget and how wonderful it is. And it was interesting how much bond money they're planning to pour into OSU Cascades and COCC and other community colleges around the state. I really think it is worth raising with our legislators the concept of why there's so much money going to higher ed and not more capital going to K-12, especially as we start looking at this awesome grant. I didn't hear it. I heard a bunch of apologies about their plans for funding K-12, and I heard excited plans to put a lot of money into higher ed. So maybe we want to talk to some legislators about how you feel about that. Maybe you think that's a good idea. I don't know. Okay, anything else? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate all of you. I'm going to see you on Monday, I'm sure, but if I don't, you'll have great holidays. And to our staff, wow, what a year. And thank you so much for your extraordinary contributions and your talents. We could not be more blessed than we are with the staff that we've got in this district. It makes a difference for our kids. Thank you all.
Thank you, board.
Okay, yeah, well,
when you email the superintendent's evaluation information,
yeah,
I'm not getting school emails right now. So if you could send it to my private email, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.